Chapter 2. The Call. Deep in the forest of the Tyson tribe, a Zonian native, Toby, son of the Tyson chief, has been looking for his fiancée since the afternoon. The day is almost coming to an end as the sun begins to set, and Toby begins to worry. "Lua!" he shouts. "Where are you?" As he continues to call for his fiancée, Toby unknowingly is being followed from a distance. Someone hiding in the bushes. "Come on, Lua. We need to head back to the village. The festival will be starting soon." The one hiding from Toby decided to reveal themselves. The person walked out from the bushes and shrubs. The sound of rustling leaves causes Toby's elfin-like ears to twitch as it picked up on the sound coming towards him. A beautiful, young Zonian woman, 19 years of age, comes out from her hiding place and walks up to Toby. At first, Toby was startled by her approach till he recognized it was his fiancée, Lua. "There you are," Toby said, relieved. He was thrilled to find his fiancée. However, something about her seemed different. She wasn't the bubbly self she normally was. As she stands before him, her eyes were glazed and lifeless, her skin pale upon any person's normal complexion. She had no expression at first, but then she gently smiled back at her beloved. Despite all that, Toby was happy to see her and embraces her. She in turn returned the gesture as she buried her face in her lover's chest. "Lua, where were you?" he asks. "You've been gone for hours. I was worried." Lua remains silent as she gently rests her head on his arm. As Toby continues to hold his love, he can't help but notice how cold she felt in his arms. In fact, her body felt cold against his. On top of that, he notices the back of her clothes were wet. "Darling, aren't you cold?" Toby asks. "You feel cold to the touch, and your blouse is soaked. Did you fall in the lake?" Toby lifts his hands to see why it was wet. His face turned pale when he sees that his hand is covered in blood. "Lua, you're bleeding!" Toby begins to panic. He looks at her back to see the back of her blouse soaked in blood. He takes a look at the front of her to see that the blood was starting to pool through her shirt, soaking the front part of her blouse. He looks at his shirt to see that her blood has stained it as well. "My love," Lua speaks softly. Toby looks up to see Lua still smiling as she gets closer to him. From his face, she gently caresses him down to his chest. She places her hand where his heart was. Unsure of what was going on and why she was acting this way, Toby freezes in place, waiting to hear what she was going to say. She leans forward to whisper in his ear. "The one you call Lua no longer exists," she gently whispers. Toby's mouth drops in fear as he hears these words. Sweat rolls down his face in panic as he wasn't sure what she meant. "What are you—" Before Toby can finish his sentence, something sharp and painful pierces through his chest. The pain was excruciating. Every breath made it harder to inhale. He could feel fluid begin to fill inside him. He coughs, and blood begins to come from out of his mouth as blood was filling his lungs. He looks at his beloved, who looks at him with an evil grin and cold bloodlust eyes. He looks down at his chest and sees that Lua's hand has become a sharp blade that has pierced through his chest and out his back. His eyes widened as this isn't the Lua he knows. That this creature has somehow impersonated his love. She pulls the blade out from Toby's chest. As the blade came out, more blood began to pour out from his body. He quickly grows faint as the loss of blood begins to take his life. Lua, with her small size, was able to catch Toby and with ease lowers him to the ground. "Shh, it's all right, my love," she gently speaks to him. Too weak to speak, all Toby can do is watch as something emerges from Lua's back. A black, blob-like creature stretches out and looks at Toby. From the front of the blob, a white mask comes out. Tribal-like markings debossed onto the mask. Then eyes pierced with bloodlust opens and looks at Toby. From the ground, more blob-like creatures arise, although their masks had no tribal markings, as they were the underlings to their alpha leader that had inhabited Lua. The creatures all looked at Toby like hyenas ready to consume their prey. "This body can no longer sustain me," both the creature and Lua said simultaneously, with the creature communicating through the tribal patterns on its mask. "And so I must have your body." Without a moment's hesitation, the creature jumps from Lua's body and enters into Toby's, through the wound in his chest. Too weak to fight back, all Toby could do was holler in pain as he can feel the creature filling up inside him. Every cell, every fiber of his body moving and twitching as he begins to lose control, and even his very consciousness was fading till everything went black. Toby then becomes silent. His body stopped twitching. Toby no longer existed. With the alpha creature in complete control of Toby's body, there on the ground beside him was a dried-up husk of Lua's body. He moves his hands and fingers. He stretches and twists his body as though he was trying on a new suit. Assimilation is complete, Toby says, pleased with his choice. He then touches the back of his jaw, as it now became a comlink, thanks to the help of the creature's ability. "Master, Alpha number 078 reporting in. I have taken control of the chief's son." "Good work," responds the master through the comlink. "Commence the second objective as planned." "Yes, my master," Toby responds. Toby looks at his underlings as they look back at him, waiting their orders. "Second objective will now commence. Destination, the Tyson village," Toby orders his followers. The creatures nod in response and slink back into the ground, as though it was water. Using the memories of the one he inhabited, he returns to the village, leaving the husk of Lua's body behind. Night has arrived, and the Tyson village celebrates a prosperous first harvest of the year. There was food made from the harvest, music that filled the air, and dancing as the villagers performed around the bonfire. Laughter and joy echoed throughout the forest. Everyone was having a great time. A young couple, Kalon and Alora, were sitting on a bench behind a local hut away from the celebration, as they wanted to spend time together. They cuddled and made out, but unknown to them, Kalon's sister Leah waits patiently from under the bench for the right moment. "Alone at last," Kalon says to his girlfriend. Alora playfully giggles as she knows they are not of age, but seeing that adults do it, she wanted to experience what it's like. "Won't someone see us?" she asks. "Don't worry, it's just you and me." Kalon then leans forward, closes his eyes, and puckers as he inches closer to Alora to kiss her. Alora does the same. Before the two could make contact, Leah makes her move by grabbing Alora's leg. Alora jumps up in fright. She looks down to see someone has held hold of her leg. She makes a shrill that causes Kalon to open his eyes to see what was happening. He looks down to see a small hand holding Alora's leg. He stands up and looks under the bench to see his little sister smile with glee at her playful prank. "Leah!" Kalon yells out, annoyed to what she did. Leah releases her grip on Alora and tries to escape, but her brother reaches out and grabs her, pulling her out from under the bench. "What's wrong with you? Can't you see I want to be alone with Alora?" Kalon scolds his sister. He then begins to drag his sister towards the villagers around the bonfire. She tries to resist, but she wasn't strong enough as she was being forced to return. "This is not fair," she yells back. "You always want to hang out with Alora. You never make time for me anymore." Kalon stops in place and turns to face his sister. He kneels down to try and match her height and smiles, but she was upset. Cologne stops in place and turns to face his sister. He kneels down to try and match her height and smiles, but she was upset. Leah, you know I like spending time with you, but now's not a good time. We can spend time tomorrow. How's that? Cologne asks. Leah wells up in tears of frustration, as she knows her brother sometimes never keeps his promises. She pulls her hand away from Cologne's grip. You always say that, you jerk! She yells. She runs from her brother away from the center of the village as she heads towards their hut. Cologne stands up and watches her for a bit. Knowing she was running off to their home, he returned to check on Allura. Leah begins to cry. She couldn't help it, as she felt her best friend, her brother, was pulling further away from their friendship. Too distracted by what happened, Leah wasn't paying attention and bumped into someone. The impact causes her to fall back and land on the ground. Ow! Watch it! She snaps as she rubs her sore butt. She looks up and gasps as she sees it was Toby, but not Toby. He looks down at her, glaring at her with a look as though he would kill her on the spot, and no one would know. She froze in place, unsure what was going to happen to her. Then she realized that Toby's shirt was stained in blood. Her fear then grew to curiosity. Toby, what happened to you? Toby ignores her question and looks ahead instead at the villagers nearby. He walks past her, heading towards the bonfire where everybody gathered. She stands up and watches as he walks away. Not wanting to follow, she heads back home. Unknown to her, as the full moon cast her shadow, beady eyes, like the creatures from earlier, opened up from her own shadow and watches her, waiting for the right moment to strike. Meanwhile, Toby arrives to the festival and makes his way towards the bonfire. At first, the villagers were thrilled to see the son of the Tyson chief arrive to the festival, but they noticed his blood-stained shirt and muttered among themselves as to what happened to him. Even others started questioning Lua's whereabouts. One of the villagers informed the chief about his son. The chief arrives to the bonfire concerned about his son. Toby, what happened to you? Were you attacked? He asks. Toby ignores the chief as he looked around. Unknown to everybody, Toby was scanning the environment, calculating how many people were in the village. Come, son, let's get your wounds checked out, says the chief as he grabs him by the hand and tries to take him to the medicine hut. But Toby wasn't moving, as he was still scanning. The chief stops pulling and looks at his son, who was ignoring him. Son, are you okay? He asks. You went to get Lua, but only you returned. Son, speak to me. The chief grabs Toby by the face to get his attention. Toby then looks at the chief, then grabs him by the throat and lifts him off the ground. The villagers watched in horror to what was happening. The chief tries to pry his son's grip desperately to get in between breaths of air. Son, what are you doing? He said, gasping for air. Abduction will now commence, Toby orders. Suddenly, from a distance, is screaming as a creature comes from out of the person's very own shadow and grabs her. From out of the ground, more of the creatures emerged and started capturing the villagers. The village was being invaded as villagers tried to flee for their lives. The villagers that were captured by the creatures were being dragged toward an open area away from the village. They all stood in one spot patiently waiting as something approached them from above, but was hidden. Suddenly the sky opens up and an airship decloaks itself as it was hidden using a cloaking device. As villagers are trying to escape, Cologne and Allura are looking for Leah as everything around them was chaotic. Cal, we have to get out of here. They'll take us away like the others, Allura cries. Not until we find my sister, he orders. Without a moment to lose, Cologne hears his sister cry for help and follows the sound as it was towards their home. Leah is cornered as the creature that was hiding within her own shadow emerged and was trying to capture her. Stuck in her room, she trembles in fear as the creature inches close to her. Someone help! Leah screams. Just as the creature is about to lunge at Leah, it gets intercepted by Kalon, who pounces at it. The two fight and scramble around the room. Allura runs over to Leah and moves her away from the fight. The creature takes a swipe at Kalon with its claws, but Kalon moves just in time as the claws only rips at his shirt. Kalon sees the axe that they use for chopping wood and grabs it. He starts to swing at the creature, which dodges. Leah, wanting to help, grabs a nearby book and throws it at the creature. The creature gets hit in the back of the head by the book. It looks back to see who did it, giving Kalon the perfect time to swing his axe and kill the creature by striking it on its face. The mask breaks and shatters. As it shatters, the creature shrills in agony and falls apart to its death. Relieved, Leah and Allura hug Kalon. "Brother, I was so scared," cries Leah. "It's all right. We're getting out of here. Come on," Kalon orders. The three dart from house to house, avoiding the creatures as they were checking each house to see if there was anyone hiding in the houses. Meanwhile, Toby releases his grip on his father's throat. As he falls to the ground, the chief catches his breath, but two other creatures rise from the ground and hold the chief by each arm, keeping him on his knees. "What is the meaning of this, Toby? Answer me," the chief commands. "It's simple, Father," Toby calmly says as he unbuttons his blood-stained shirt. Baring his chest, he reveals the wound where Lua stabbed him. But in the center, an imprint of the Alpha leader's face mask emerged. Soon, the imprint begins to protrude from Toby's chest as he emerges from his body. From its head down to its torso, the creature appears as it coldly stares at the chief. The chief's jaws drop as he couldn't believe what he was seeing. "By the dragon! What are you?" the chief asks in horror. "We are lurkers," the Alpha leader replies with his inhuman mechanical voice alongside Toby as the two were in sync. "Our master needs humans. You will serve our master." The Alpha lurker uses Toby's hands, snaps his fingers, and the two lurkers send the chief away towards the airship. The chief struggles to break free from the lurkers, but their grip were too strong. "Damn you vile creatures! You killed my son! You will pay for this!" yells the chief as he was being taken away. The Alpha monitors the progress of the capture, but notices three figures running from the village and into the forest. Capture will now commence. The Alpha lurker follows them. The three escaping were in fact Kalon, Allura, and Leah, as they were running, hoping to find help. "Kalon, why didn't we look for Mom and Dad?" Leah asks curiously. "We have to keep going. We need to get to Auran and warn the city about these monsters. They'll know what to do," Kalon explains. Suddenly, a small beam of energy arrives without warning. It flies past Kalon and Leah, which was too fast for them to see, but braces against Allura's left arm, causing a deep wound. It started to bleed. Allura screams out in pain. She stops in place as she goes down on one knee, holding her wound. The others gather around her to examine her. "What happened?" Kalon asks. "How did you get hurt?" I don't know," Allura replies, trying to hold back the tears. "Something hit me." As Leah watches Kalon trying to tend to her wound, she starts to feel a strong presence, something powerful approaching. She looks back to see something coming after them from a distance. Leah tugs at her brother's shirt to get his attention. "Kalon, something is coming," she cries out. Kalon looks back to see that it was Toby running towards them, but he also sees that the Alpha lurker was attached to him. In the condition that Allura was in, they would be caught for sure. With no other choice, Kalon makes a choice that he knew had to be done. He brings Leah close to him to grab her attention. "Listen, sis, I need you to be brave for me and help Allura escape. I need you two to get help," he orders. Leah looks at him surprised that he is not going with them. "But what about you, brother?" she asks. "Please come with us," she begs. Kalon smiles at his sister and hopes that that would help convince her that everything will be all right. "I'll be fine," he replies. "The city needs to know what is happening. I will hold him off so you guys have a running start. Protect yourself and Allura." Leah begins to tear up, afraid that she may never see her brother again. Understanding the circumstances, she agrees to his request. She helps Allura up and the two run off while Cologne remains where he stood. He turns to face Toby, who arrives to the scene. He stands before Cologne and looks around the area for the others. "There were 3 of you. Where have the other 2 fled?" the Toby Alpha Lurker asks. "Don't worry about them," Cologne replies. "Your business is with me now, so come at me." Toby charges at Cologne and aims to strike at him. Cologne dodges his attacks and counters with a kick. Toby bends back, avoiding his kick as it swings past him. Cologne continues to throw kicks and punches, pushing Toby back as he dodges with ease. This frustrates Cologne as he knew he would get tired if he continued to attack. "Quit moving around and hold still," Cologne yells. "If you insist," replies Toby. Toby then stands still, which causes Cologne to make contact. Cologne kicks Toby in the neck so hard that he breaks Toby's neck. Toby's head rests on Cologne's foot, as inside, the bones to his neck was detached from his body. Something like that would have killed Toby instantly, but since he was already dead and nothing more than a puppet to the Alpha Lurker, Toby just smiles. Cologne starts to freak out as he realizes that Toby isn't human anymore. "This fight is futile," Toby replies as he grabs Cologne's foot and quickly breaks his ankle. Cologne yells in pain and takes his leg back. He keeps his injured foot from completely touching the ground, as he uses his good foot for support and balance. Toby puts his neck back in place as the Alpha Lurker fixes it. Cologne was amazed at the Lurker's capability of healing itself. With the ability of the Alpha Lurker, Toby's arms became metallic tentacles as he begins to attack Cologne with it. It wasn't easy for Cologne to maneuver, and Toby grabs a hold of Cologne's good leg. He lifts him up in the air and he slams him to the ground several times before he stops. Cologne coughs from the dust in the air. As soon as the dust clears, Toby brings Cologne up to the Alpha Lurker's face. He wraps Cologne tight like a python holding its prey. "It was foolish of you to fight me, human, when you and I both know that there was no chance you would win," the Toby Lurker scolds Cologne. Cologne knew he was defeated. Instead, he begins to laugh, which causes the Alpha Lurker to grow concerned. "You laugh at your own defeat?" it asks. "This is illogical." "Idiot," Cologne exclaims. "I did this to buy my sister and my girl some time to escape." The Toby Lurker just remembered about the other 2 and looks around as they were nowhere in sight, and he couldn't detect them. Enraged, the Alpha Lurker's tentacle-like hair transformed into sharp metallic blades and points them at Cologne, ready to pierce and tear his face apart. Cologne just smiles at him. "Go ahead and kill me," he enticed. "My death gives them a chance to get help and stop you. So who's the foolish one now?" "Enough!" yells the Lurker's master in speaker mode through the Alpha Lurker's comlink. Toby is obedient and stops his threat towards Cologne. "Master, 2 other humans have escaped," the Toby Lurker replies. "Forget them and return to the village and complete your mission," orders its master. "Yes, my master." Still wrapped in its tentacles, the Toby Lurker carries Cologne back towards the village. "Consider yourself fortunate, human. Where you will be going, you'd wish I ended your life swiftly." Night has fallen in the city of Auran. In the heart of Auran was its castle that softly illuminates in the night. Around it were modern-day buildings like skyscrapers and towers that looked almost futuristic. As the city stretches towards its border, it then becomes desolate, where the poor and thieves dwell. At the end of the city were its gates that borders all of Auran. The guards at the gate of Auran monitored the traffic and flow of ingoing and outgoing visitors. All was peaceful till they began to hear the sound of a child calling for help. One of the guards left their post and followed the sound. The guard reaches the bridge that has very little lighting. From a distance, he sees the silhouette of what looks like a small person trying to hold up another person that is bigger. "Who's there?" the guard calls out. Using a flashlight, he shines it at the two to reveal Leah holding a Laura who has collapsed due to the loss of blood from her wound. "Please help us! She needs a doctor!" Leah pleads to the guard. The guard responds by taking out a radio-like device contacting help. "This is the front gate calling for medical assistance by the bridge. I repeat, I need medical assistance by the bridge," the guard requests over the radio. Help was on the way for our little heroines. The news of the girls reached the castle. The next day, a meeting was held at a chamber held for council. Inside were the delegated representatives and elders for the city of Auran. Like the Senate or Supreme Court in America, they represented the people and maintained the law and order for their city and country. Inside the room where they all gathered was designated just like how the House of Representatives are set. Only the elders are held in a higher area in the room, while the other representatives remain on the lower areas surrounding the elders. They were informed of the incident that happened last night and have called a meeting to discuss what must be done. "This meeting will now commence," says Elder Chandler as he pounds his gavel on the block. A councilman representative stands from his seat to begin the discussion. "Last night, my elders, 2 young girls from the Tyson tribe managed to escape last night from an unknown attack to their village," reports the councilman. "They state that their attackers were creatures with white masks. They possessed their chief's son, captured their friends and families, and took them to a floating airship that appeared out of thin air. Sounds a little off, if you ask me." "Not necessarily," Elder Fundia replies. "Reports have indicated that 3 local villages have been raided overnight with its inhabitants either missing or dead. We were fortunate to have survivors or else we wouldn't have known. Clearly nothing has been done." "Actually, Elder Flundia, we've sent military personnel to investigate one of the villages. However, it seems the only thing left was a recorded feed from one of the soldiers," the councilman replies as he activates a holographic projector using a built-in computer within his desk. From the center of the room, a small round section of the floor opened up and a futuristic device rises from the ground. It activates, projecting footage from a small camera. The footage shows a soldier and his platoon investigating an abandoned and demolished village. As the soldier turns a corner, a lurker sprang up to attack. He succeeds in killing, but then he hears guns fire and screams from his fellow men. From his point of vision, he turns to see his comrades getting killed one by one from a small group of lurkers. The soldier tries to shoot one that was approaching him, but it dodges the bullet with ease. It knocks the soldier to the ground and finishes him with several swipes. The entire council and elders cringe at the scene and the sound of the soldier getting slaughtered to death. The video ends, showing the face of the lurker with blood-covered claws about to strike again. The room was then filled with everyone speaking to each other, wondering what the creature was and worried about what will happen to the city of Auran if they make their way to the city. In order for the communication to end, one of the elders, Elder Chandler, uses his gavel to bring everyone back to attention. "Order! Order!" he yelled. An older councilman, Councilman Set, leaves his seat and approaches the floor. Everyone remains silent but curious to what the councilman was doing. "Councilman Set, do you have something to say?" Elder Chandler asked. "Elder Chandler, I stand before everyone to say that those things will not set foot in our city," Councilman Set announced. "Councilman, you just saw what happened to those soldiers. Imagine if we sent an entire army. It would be a massacre," replied Councilwoman Vizar. "Clearly, Councilwoman Vizar, you have forgotten that we have a weapon that may defeat this threat," said Councilman Set as he turns and looks back at Vizar. He then faces the chamber door to the room. "You may enter," he orders. Everyone turns their attention to the chamber doors as they opened up to reveal a group of 5 standing at the door. In the center of the group was a young woman, 17 years of age, wearing a Celtic-like tiara over her head, indicating she is royalty. She was Princess Anya of Auran, daughter of the late King Zarkon. Behind her was second-in-command and confidant Rika, a tall milk chocolate-toned woman who is a little older than Anya, with military-like attitude. The following two behind them was a large-built, brawny fighter type named Caleb, and a Zonian Jin halfling named Vincero, but his team calls him Vinny for short. The five walked inside the room. When the council noticed the princess coming inside, they all stood at attention. "All rise for Princess Anya and her knights," Elder Chandler shouts. The princess and her knights walked up to Councilman Set. The councilman bows to pay his respect to the princess. The princess nods, accepting his gesture. Councilman Set then faces the elders. "Over the years, I have gathered the descendants of our most powerful warriors to prepare them for a situation as dire as this," stated the councilman. "The Knights of Auran are needed once more, and their children will lead us to victory." Elder Chandler looks at the knights, then at Councilman Set. He strokes his beard, thinking about the councilman's statement to use the knights to fight off these monsters. "Councilman Set, do you actually believe that these children are capable of handling a mission as important as this?" "Children!" shouts Caleb. Caleb walks past Vinny and Rika, trying to make his way towards the elders, but the princess raises her arm to prevent Caleb from moving any further. "Caleb, stand down," orders the princess. Caleb listens to his princess and backs off, even though he feels that they are still arrogant pricks sitting high and mighty in their chairs. The princess lowers her arm down. "Elder Chandler, our parents risked their lives to save our people from threats of long ago. You've relied on them for their safety and protection. They left a legacy that we may never match. But despite all that, we are here, and we will fight to protect our home," she expressed. "Your Highness, in 1 year you will be queen. Should you choose this path of fulfilling your father's role, your life will be at risk," states Elder Chandler. "If anything happens to you, it will jeopardize our kingdom." The princess looks down, giving what the elder said some thought. She then looks back at Elder Chandler. "I understand your concern, Elder, but my father left me with the fate of Auran on my shoulders. I can't just sit here while my team risks their lives. I want to go," she explains. Elder Chandler looks sternly at Princess Anya and her knights. They all look serious, confident even, convincing the elder that there may be hope. He lifts his gavel up. "Councilman Set, you may send your knights on this mission. We hope for your sake they do not fail us." Elder Chandler hits his gavel on the sound block, ending their meeting. Inside the hangar bay, adjacent to the castle, the crew for the Knights' aircraft was busy at work, gathering the necessary items needed for the airship. Vinny was monitoring their progress. Rika was directing the traffic of the guards who were bringing in ammo and weapons needed for battle. From the balcony of the hangar, Princess Anya watches the progress of everything, but instead of showing her excitement, she instead was concerned. More than that, she was worried about how fast everything was coming together. She thinks back years ago when the councilman approached her about creating a new team of knights. She was worried then, but she still didn't want to ruin her father's legacy. Her train of thought was then interrupted when she hears someone clearing their throat from a distance. She turns around to see Councilman Set standing at the doorway. "Councilman Set, what are you doing here?" the princess asks out of curiosity. "I wanted to wish you luck and see you off on your first mission. Your father would have been proud," he replied. At that response, the princess looks away doubtful of Set's positive reply. The fact that he would compare her to her own father discouraged her. The councilman notices and looks at her in curiosity. "What seems to be troubling you, my princess?" he asks. "You say my father would be proud of me, but am I ready?" I've been waiting for this moment to prove my worth. But what if I can't lead? What if I make mistakes? The councilman thinks about what she said. He wanted to help steer her negative thoughts away from the mission. Then he remembered he had something for her. He reaches into his inner pocket of his long garb-like robe. I think I have just the thing for you, my princess. He takes the item out of his pocket and puts it in the princess's hands and closes them. She opened her hands and looks down to see it was a round gold brooch. The brooch was decorated with white crystal stones, but in the center of the brooch was a 1-inch size red gemstone, which glistened brighter than the other stones around it. She marveled at the beautiful gift, as she has never seen a brooch so gorgeous. Councilman, it's beautiful, she exclaims, awing at the gift. Could you be so kind to help me pin it on, Councilman? Of course, Your Majesty, the councilman replied. She gave him the brooch, and the councilman placed the brooch over her black lace choker. I wanted to give this to you upon your coronation, but I think now's a good time. It was a gift from your father, he said. The princess started to well up in tears as she couldn't believe her father got her something as wonderful as this. Despite her role as the princess, she hugs Councilman Set as she couldn't help but express her joy over the gift given to her. He in turn embraces her as well, like a father hugging his daughter. Rika arrives to the balcony where the princess and Councilman were. She calls on the princess to get her attention. Both she and Councilman stopped hugging and face Rika. Your Highness, we're ready, Rika reports. The princess looks at the councilman and begins to worry, but Councilman smiles at her, assuring her she will be all right. Go in honor of the fallen, he said. He then bows to her and she accepts his gesture. Both Rika and the princess leave from the balcony and head to the aircraft where Vinny and Caleb were already on board. The people outside the hangar have made room for the aircraft to depart. The princess sits at the captain's seat, watching as her knights prepare for takeoff. The operators from the radio tower contacts them. This is the radio tower to the Knights of Auran. You have clearance. Please proceed to take flight, announced the operator. Copy that, Vinny replied. We have clearance from the tower to take off. Commencing countdown in T-10 seconds. As Vinny counts down, Rika notices a flashing button on the control panel as she received a signal from their intercom. Princess, we have an incoming message. Retrieving now, Rika orders as she presses the button to accept the call. In front of the princess, a hologram device comes down from the ceiling of the aircraft and projects a hologram. From his head to his shoulders, General de Grandis of Auran's army appeared. Greetings, Your Highness. This is General de Grandis. We have orders from the elders to accompany you and your knights as backup, stated the general. Thank you, General, the princess replies. With your help, we can cover more ground. Please be careful out there. The general salutes and the transmission ends. Vinny finishes countdown and pushes the lever to ignite the thrusters. The aircraft comes to life as the engines ignite, powering up those thrusters. We have liftoff, announced Vinny. The aircraft rises from the floor and moves forward out of the hangar and into the air. As they were flying towards their destination, General de Grandis and his men were on their aircraft, following from behind. Princess Anya gently touches her gift. She looks beside her and sees her reflection from a nearby control deck. She watches as the red gemstone in the center shimmers and resonates. She almost becomes mesmerized by its beauty. I've never seen a stone so beautiful, she thought. It almost looks alive. She then realizes that they were heading to something they may never come back from. She thought to herself, if this is to be a gift from her father, maybe it'll bring her good luck. She holds the brooch tight and closes her eyes. Father, she softly whispers to herself, knights from the past, if you can hear me, please give us strength. The strength to defeat our foes. As she continues to softly wish on her gift, unknown to her, in the center of the brooch, the gemstone begins to softly glow and resonate as if sending a signal. Deep in a temple far from Auran, buried in sand, a garnet gemstone the size of a person's hand is glowing in the dark as it responds to the princess's gemstone from her brooch. The garnet stone then emits a beam of light that shoots out from the temple, stretching out from the sand and into the air. 3 other temples hidden around their world contain stones of different colors: green, blue, and gold. Just like the garnet stone, they too started glowing in response to the princess's brooch and emitted a beam of light which shoots out from their location and into the sky. The beams of light stretched beyond space itself. The 4 beams of light merged to become one giant pillar of light, which continued to stretch throughout the galaxy. End of Chapter 2. Thank you everyone for listening. I hope you enjoyed this chapter. If you did, please consider supporting this channel by liking and subscribing. And don't forget to click on that bell for notifications. If you find this series, Knights of Auran, interesting, then please help with a small donation through Ko-fi. Or, if you'd like to invest in this project, come and be an average Patreon. And help me try to make this novel into a webcomic. And possibly create merchandise and other future endeavors. Thank you again for listening, and stay tuned.